Hello students, this is the video lecture about the television industry, chapter 12 in the textbook, okay? There was actually a broadcasting of the Olympic Games as early as 1936. This was in Germany. The Olympics were in Berlin that year, and the Nazis had a very sophisticated, or at least at the time, the most sophisticated version of television in the entire world. And a lot of American engineers went over there and learned how television operated by copying Nazi technology. All right, Mindich uses this quote. This is a very, very famous quote from Newton Minow, the head of the ACC, the head of the FCC, excuse me, who at the time was the head of the FCC, who referred to television as a vast wasteland. And people still sometimes invoke that and refer to that, the idea that television is really, really low quality. There's an old joke from a comedian, I believe his name was Fred Allen. The joke goes, television is a medium because nothing is rare, nor is it well done. I think that's pretty funny. Television is a medium because nothing is rare, nor is it well done. Okay, I want to show this. I've showed this graphic before when I talked about early radio, but I wanted to show it again. This is a graphic of the NBC radio network, but it applies to television as well. When we talk about television broadcast networks, we're really talking about a web of a bunch of local stations which are known as affiliates. Okay, so the affiliates over here in San Diego, with San Diego over here on the left, when you're watching broadcast television in San Diego, you're getting your signal from the local affiliate, but the programming itself might be national. It might be piped in. In this scenario, NBC is like, the big brother, the big giant corporation. They distribute national programming through satellite technology, through telephone lines, different technologies. So they distribute the national programming to all the local stations, but the local stations are the ones that are actually transmitting it to you. You should be aware of that general concept. Okay, of the early TV networks, we had ABC, CBS, and NBC. They all came out of radio and transitioned their revenue from focusing on radio to focusing on TV. Dumont was an early television network that did not have a radio network. So Dumont was ultimately unsuccessful. They were starting from scratch, as it were. Dumont was a manufacturer of television receivers. That was their original business. They were a manufacturer of television receivers. Okay, I'm going to read from the slide here, and most of these notes come directly from the textbook. The idea of broadcasting is that you are trying to get as many eyeballs as you can. And when there were limited options, we only had a few television stations in each city. Historically, something like I Love Lucy, or what was another one that was really, really popular a long time ago? Oh, Beverly Hillbillies. They could get 2/3 of the audience watching because there just weren't that many other options. And people, of course, didn't have DVRs, they didn't have VCRs, and they didn't have cable. So you're really limited. So it's understandable how I Love Lucy could get 2/3 of the audience. Today, successful shows are watched by a fraction of the audience. Okay, I give some examples in the lecture on TV ratings, but really we just have so many options, it's impossible to get even 50%. Even the Super Bowl won't even get like 50% of the country. It might get around that number, but the Super Bowl and the Academy Awards are probably the only thing that get these monster ratings any longer. And the purpose is to sell advertising. If you can get the most number of eyeballs on your program, you're going to sell more advertising. There is a term, and I'm glad Mindich can use this term, lowest common denominator, okay? Lowest common denominator. This refers to the fact that television typically goes for the most simple, the most non-offensive, the most plain, bland, vanilla programming, because you don't want to alienate advertisers or alienate potential audience members. Now, this is not entirely true anymore because we do have so many options. There are certain channels or certain shows which will try and be provocative, try and be edgy, but for the most part, the history of television programming has been appealing to the lowest common denominator. In the film Idiocracy, it's set far, far in the future. People have gotten dumber, essentially, like the title of the movie suggests, Idiocracy. And the most popular program on television is Ow My Balls. Here's a little clip from Idiocracy. Ow, my balls!
You're gonna get hit in the balls.
The textbook talks a good bit about Edward R. Murrow and the rise of TV journalism, and that's an important passage. I repeat, that is an important passage, okay? Murrow really showed that television journalism could be a serious force and could affect politics. There's a very famous broadcast where he challenged Joseph McCarthy, who was an avowed anti-communist, and many things we now know, many things that McCarthy said were just complete fabrications, right? Complete fabrications. Anyone that McCarthy wanted to attack, he would just claim that they were a communist. Some people had their careers ruined or their careers seriously damaged, including a lot of people in Hollywood, and we now know that it was not true at all. Murrow really challenged McCarthy and gets credit for essentially taking him down and showing that he was a fraud. Okay, now I showed that slide a little bit ago about local affiliates. The reason that's important here is local TV stations make most of the money from news, okay? Local TV stations make their money from news. When they air something like The Bachelor or CSI or Dancing with the Stars, another big program, that is coming from the main broadcast network. And if there are 15 minutes of television commercials in an hour, that's kind of the ratio, 15 minutes in an hour, most of that ad inventory is going to be controlled by the big broadcast network. Okay, so out of those 15 minutes, 12 minutes or maybe 13 minutes of money is going to the main broadcast network, not going to the local station. However, when it comes to local news, the local stations make the entirety of that money. Okay, that's the distinction. If there are 15 minutes of commercials in an hour on TV, the local station is now controlling all 15 minutes when it comes to local TV news. And this is one reason why we have so much local TV news. I sometimes flip around the dial and I wonder, maybe we just need one. I mean, the weather report is pretty much the same on every one of them, and the traffic report is pretty much the same. And when they give the sports scores, they're giving the same sports scores, but because they make so much money, it is in the best interest of every local station to put on a lot of local news. Public television. Mindich talks about public television. This was developed in part because there were so many complaints about TV being a vast wasteland. Okay, there was a need for more significant news and public affairs programming and stuff that was really in the public interest. I've talked about public interest before, and even though local TV stations are supposed to operate in the public interest, sometimes it's hard to see how they are doing that. And PBS has given us many great things, including Sesame Street. Take a look at this clip on Sesame Street. That cute little Pakistani girl in the top left. Yeah, that's my wife. My wife was a regular on Sesame Street. It's not going to be on the quiz. I'm just showing it because what the heck, I can.
Three of these kids belong together. Three of these kids are kind of the same. But one of these kids is doing his own thing. Now it's time to play our game. It's time to play our game.
Hello, students, and hello to anyone else out there who maybe is not a student. This is an overview of Nielsen television ratings. All right, I'm going to try and break down some of the information that is often presented, especially in industry trade journals. Before I get into a full explanation as to where these numbers come from, we're just going to start with an example. This is an article from Hollywood Reporter from December 1st, 2023 about the TV show The Golden Bachelor. The Golden Bachelor.
What the article is saying right here is that the season finale did very, very well. It's also the best performance for any show in the Bachelor universe since 2021. Okay. Now, here is what we're going to explain. The finale hit a season high among adults 18 to 49, averaging a 0.8 rating in the key ad sales demographic. That's the best same day performance for the franchise since the season 19 finale. What do we mean by a 0.8 rating in adults 18 to 49? What that means is a rating is a percentage, and I'm going to repeat that here in a moment. A rating is a percentage. So, in this case, of all adults in the United States who have access to television in the age range of 18 to 49, okay, got that. Of all adults in the United States who have access to television in the age range of 18 to 49, 0.8% of them watched some or all of The Golden Bachelor. Now, that does not seem like a very high percentage, but bear in mind, because we live in an era of great television abundance, there are so many things to watch, so many video options that anything that can get even a couple percentage points is considered a success. Historically, shows used to get much higher ratings. Does not mean more people watched in the past. It only meant it was a higher percentage. And if you think in the 1960s, when there was only 3 big TV channels to watch, it's not unusual for one channel to get 30, 40, or even 50% of the audience. But in today's modern era, you can be considered a success with a 0.8 percentage in 18 to 49.
First off, why are we talking about 18 to 49? 18 to 49 is a key demographic for advertisers. Viewers under the age of 18 are presumed to have limited income. Okay, 18 to 49. People over the age of 49 are presumed to already have brand loyalties. Okay, by the time you reach that age and are no longer in the prime demographic, you know what kind of jeans you like, what kind of shoes you like, what kind of car you like, etc., etc., etc. Now, I do think it's a bit odd that the cutoff is 49 because presumably people over the age of 49 have more income than the people in the sort of lower range of that demographic. But that is basically what advertisers want to go for. They want to go for people aged 18 to 49. Women are especially important because the presumption is that women control the purchasing of a household. Maybe this is an old fashioned gendered stereotype. I agree, but that is still a driving concept that women control the purchasing of a household. And 18 to 34 is also a desirable demographic. The idea here is that if you can get something popular or trending within the younger 18 to 34, then the people over the age of 34 want to pretend they're young, they want to act like they're young, so they'll sort of follow what the younger people are doing. Here are some basic definitions, very basic definitions. A rating is a percent. At its most basic level, it is a percent of television households. Okay. Now, Nielsen, the company that generates these ratings, assumes that anyone who has access to a television signal is going to be considered a television household. What that means is, even if you do not have a traditional television, now they're all big flat screen TVs, even if you don't have something like that, you probably have a computer or a laptop or maybe a smartphone that has internet access. You can get a television signal that way. So, most American homes are considered part of this population. So a rating is a percent of television households. However, it can also be a percent of people if it is specified. Okay, so if the Hollywood Reporter says American Idol got a 4, that means a 4% of television households. If Hollywood Reporter says American Idol got a 4 in 18 to 49, that 18 to 49 lets you know that we are now talking about people. So it is 4% of the people in that age range. That is the distinction. And just to make things even a little bit more complicated, there is the concept of a share. This is a percent of television households exposed to a program. However, In the sample that we're using, we are excluding anyone who was not watching television at that given time period. Here is a graphic. What is the rating for channel 2? In this particular image, we have 3 households. They look like little Monopoly homes, don't they? We have 3 homes watching channel 2. That's 3 out of 10. The rating would be 30. Exactly the same graphic. You have the same information. We are now excluding these 4 homes, the ones that are black, because these individuals are doing something else. Okay, maybe they're out at the club, maybe they're out playing sports or out walking the dog. They're not watching TV. Of these 6 homes, 3 of them are watching channel 2. That would be a 50 share, 50%. What does all this stuff ultimately try and tell us? Well, the holy grail of audience metrics would be some type of device, such as a people meter. I will explain that in a few minutes, that tracks all media usage and product purchases. Ultimately, that's what the industry is going for. Okay. Ultimately, that is what the industry is going for. Some type of device that could measure what TV show, what film, what music did you listen to. Conceivably, it could even track print, right? What magazine did you pick up? They could read the barcode. What newspaper did you pick up? They could probably figure that out as well. And then match that up to what you are actually purchasing. Okay. If we had a system like this, which we do not have, but if we had a system like this, you would have such unbelievable granular data on consumers that the advertising industry and anyone who sells products would be enormously happy. For example, they could say, people who watch Friends, what's the likelihood they're going to buy my particular brand of toothpaste? Or people who watch Real Housewives, what's the likelihood that they're going to buy a vacation cruise to such and such place? Now, again, this kind of system doesn't exist. Uh, Probably it will never exist, but that's ultimately what all this is trying to get at. Okay. If we can try and match up exactly what people are consuming and then match it up with what they're purchasing, that's the kind of data we want. Where do the ratings come from? Okay. They come from samples. It is a small representative sample from the population. There's over 300 million people who could watch television in the United States. Maybe the number's like 330 million, something in that range. There's no way to poll or survey every 330 million people. But if you do tens of thousands or 30,000 or 40,000 or 50,000 from that sample, then you could extrapolate and guesstimate essentially what the entire population is doing. Think about cooking, for example. If you're cooking a big bowl of soup or a big vat of soup and you want to see if it has enough salt, you don't have to drink the entire pot of soup to determine. You can take a small sample and you assume that that sample is going to represent what's going on with the entire big pot of soup. Nielsen started measuring media consumption way back in 1942. Okay, AC Nielsen saw a demonstration of this technology, realized what it could do, so he purchased this device and created something called the Autometer. Okay, started with only 800 homes. What they would do was they would install a machine connected to your radio receiver. As you tune the radio dial, it would move a needle and some ink and actually leave a marking on this piece of paper. Okay, kind of like those things that measure earthquakes. All right, so a technician comes to your house every week or every few weeks, something like that. They could take the piece of paper and quite literally tell what radio stations you had tuned to because there was a visual indication of it. Okay. They also knew how many people who lived in the home. And this, I think this point is very interesting. The technician could also go through the products in your home, look through the kitchen pantry. This is called a pantry survey, and see what you purchased. So remember what the ultimate goal of audience measurement is. Okay. It's to match up media consumption with product purchasing. It's pretty amazing to me that at the very beginning, Nielsen had that model. Now, I mentioned diary earlier, just to give you, this is what a paper diary looks like. It covers several days of viewing. You are literally supposed to fill it out, just write out, what did you watch? What did you watch last night? Paper diaries are inexpensive. Okay. So paper diaries are very, very widely used in some areas because they're just so inexpensive. It's much cheaper than putting in an electronic device. However, you have to rely on response error or some type of bias coming from the viewer. Maybe a person is embarrassed about what they watch. I myself am a professor, I have a PhD. Do I want to admit that I watched guys' grocery games for 3 hours last night? No, I'm not going to put that in the paper diary. I might say I watched Frontline. I watched a documentary about on PBS about women's suffrage. You want to put something that, makes you look good. And then of course there's also just memory. I don't remember. I don't remember what I watched 3 days ago. I forgot to fill out the diary, and then I just go back and throw in some numbers and write some things down. This is what Nielsen is trying to go to now, something called the PPM, a portable people meter. Okay. If you don't know, or if you haven't already been exposed to this idea, it's a device. I used to say it's the size of a pager, but no one carries pagers anymore. It's smaller than a phone. Let's say that. Okay. It's smaller than a phone. You wear it on your device, you put it in your bag you're carrying, you could clip it on your belt, and it uses sound. Okay, there is a digital watermark that is inserted into all the programming. It works for radio, it works for TV. The human ear doesn't recognize it. You won't know that it's there, but that device will pick it up and it triggers something that says, hey, this person is watching Fox, this person is watching E News, or this person is listening to Z90. That information can then be transmitted wirelessly to some big supercomputer somewhere. Okay. Now, the benefit of this is that you do not have to rely on memory. You don't have to remember, people don't have to remember to record what they listened to or what they watched. It's another benefit is that the PPM, it's attached to a particular person. So in my case, they would know, it's a white man of this age, and we know exactly who it was. There's no question of, oh, was that his partner? Was that his mother-in-law? Was that his son?
Here we have some Nielsen data from the week of October 23rd for 2023. This is stuff compiled by Nielsen using the PPM and also using the diaries that I've already talked about. For this particular week, football was doing very, very well. Not surprisingly, sports continue to do very, very well with traditional broadcast television because they are the kind of thing that you want to watch live as it is occurring. You don't want to watch a sporting event a week, 2 weeks later, because you will know the results. Here for this particular week, it looks like the Chicago Bears beat the the Los Angeles Chargers. My tongue still has a problem with that. That game got an 8.4 rating. Now we're not talking about demographics because we are not given that age breakdown of 18 to 49 or 18 to 35. This would be a household rating. 8.4 is a household rating. That means 8.4% of television household watch some or all of the game. And then moving down, the kickoff got 6.9, and then football night in America, is that what comes on afterwards? 5.5. Okay, so when you see a rating like this without the age range, that means it is a household percentage. Now, when it comes to streaming, because of the incredible difficulty in calculating the audience for these different streaming platforms, Nielsen has opted to do something a little bit different. Streaming shows are calculated based on the number of minutes viewed. Number of minutes. That doesn't mean necessarily number of people. You could have a small number of people binge watching The Crown or binge watching Squid Game, or you could, just have a whole group of people watching one show. Anyway, point is that with streaming, we count the number of minutes. And for this particular week, this is November 13th to November 19th, 2023, The Crown got 943 million minutes of viewing. 943 million minutes. ahead of, wow, Grey's Anatomy. That's an old show. And then we have Suits down there. Suits has been kind of a remarkable success. This show was not considered terribly successful when it first came out, but it's got a tremendous new life now that it is streaming on Netflix.
As an overview, in conclusion, I know this is a lot of information. Ratings and shares are percentages, okay? If you're in my class, you should look at the notes and be aware of that. There's a very good chance you'll see some quiz or exam questions based on those concepts. The info comes from a sample of viewers, okay? We do not poll or survey or check in with every single person in the United States to see what they're watching. We take a sample and then extrapolate from that. Some of the information comes from electronic devices, including the PPM device, which I talked about earlier. Some of the information still comes from paper diaries. Paper diaries are inexpensive, and despite their many flaws, they are still used. And streaming platforms measure total minutes viewed. They do not measure viewers. Okay, that concludes my lecture on TV ratings explained. Hopefully you learned a little something from it. Now, signing off.